It began like any other night after a long day at work, but he woke up somewhere else entirely. A silver-haired woman shouts a warning to her lord. Lord Kadim simply promises to end it quickly. He leaps from the cliff, a meteor of pure force, and clashes with a hulking two-headed demon. The beast roars, its eyes glowing with malice, but Kadim's power cuts straight through its defense. The creature is utterly annihilated in a flash of light, leaving only shattered fragments to fall to the ground. The demon's remains are scattered across the scorched earth, and in the center of the devastation, Kadim stands alone. He turns, his power still radiating from him. He notes that the demon realm isn't holding back, and the road to the Archdemon will be a difficult one. But that's not his most immediate problem. He's more worried about getting an earful from Melissa, as an entire army of demons swarms toward him. And right on cue, a furious voice screams his name. It's Mage Melissa scolding him for charging in alone. Kadim simply says her name, unfazed by her anger. But their argument is cut short as another warrior charges in. It's Hero Gale, cutting a path through the demonic horde. He tells them to save the scolding for after the battle. Melissa just sighs, annoyed by his textbook heroism. Elsewhere, a silver-haired priestess offers a prayer for their success. She worries that Lord Kadim is pushing himself too hard. As the demon behind her is instantly obliterated, a fellow priest calmly reassures her. Priest Gordon trusts Kadim's judgment, easing Priestess Cyril's concerns. Gordon suggests they focus on the monsters for now. From a cliffside, another warrior watches the battle unfold. He is one of the 5 members of the hero's party, the Vanguard, tasked with defeating the Archdemon. But his thoughts are far from this battlefield. He remembers his previous life as a simple office worker, before he was suddenly pulled into the world of a game, a world filled with nightmarish creatures and demonic lords. He knows that for some, this would be an exciting adventure, but for him, it's just another day at the office. He faces a tide of monstrous flesh and fury. His unique trait is Blood Berserker, a power fueled by demon blood. He thinks that if he can just push a little harder, if he can just kill all of them, he can finally say goodbye to this damn world. He consumes their essence, activating his power. The transformation is immediate and terrifying. His only goal is to get out, faster and faster. He carves a path of destruction, leaving a mountain of bodies, and the Berserker's hunger continues to grow. A harpy-like demoness leaps into the fray, but Kadim's bloodlust only intensifies. The two clash in a brutal, chaotic dance. He roars that he will take all of her power and consume every last drop of her essence. But a voice cuts through the haze of his rage, a desperate plea for Lord Kadim to snap out of it. It's Melissa casting a spell to bring him back. Golden chains of light envelop his berserker form, and through the madness he whispers her name. He can't believe what he's become. His unique trait is a double-edged sword, and what was once just game text is now a madness devouring him. He's drowning in an ocean of bloodlust. The thirst for demonic essence has become an addiction. He wonders how long he can hold on to his sanity before the monster inside takes over completely. But Melissa's voice cuts through the rage, reassuring him that she's okay. It's their turn to protect the one who always protected them. Priestess Cyril addresses Lord Kadim. She and Gordon promise to help him fight the madness within. Gordon even offers to beat some sense into him if necessary. But their moment of respite is cut short by another voice. It's Hero Gale, ever the leader, urging them to move on. He extends a hand, reminding them of their shared goal, to save this world from the Archdemon. And with that, they continued their grueling journey. A journey that would test their bonds to the breaking point. As Kadim once again loses himself to the Berserker's rage, the monster inside Kadim roars with pure fury. But Hero Gale unleashes a devastating spinning attack. He watches, spent, hoping it's finally enough. The Berserker is struck down by the hero's light. Its form is violently ripped apart in the vortex. The battlefield falls silent once more. Elsewhere, a young acolyte asks if it's truly over. A comforting hand rests on her shoulder. A priest confirms that their ordeal has ended. She stares into the distance, still processing the devastation. The young acolyte can only stare in disbelief. A vision flashes through the chaos. As the party struggles to understand what's happening, Priestess Cyril cries out, searching for Lord Kadim, but he is already walking away from them all. Gale screams for him to stop his reckless charge. But Kadim stands tall, his decision made. He turns back for one final look, saying it was an honor to fight with them for real. As his comrades can only watch him go, a brilliant flash of light consumes the world. In the ensuing chaos, his allies are thrown back. Priestess Cyril collapses to her knees, spent. She looks up at the sky where he made his final stand, and with what little strength she has left, she calls out his name. But Kadim is already walking a different path. He finds himself alone in an endless void. He recognizes this darkness from when he first arrived. His mind is already on what he'll do when he gets home. Priorities, you know? He accepts that he can never see his companions again. The identity of Kadim, the great warrior, is now a memory. Before him lies the exit, a path back to his reality. He believes freedom is just one step away until he notices the fine print. A horrifying realization dawns on his face. A familiar, glowing symbol appears in the darkness, and his disbelief shatters into manic laughter. He lets out a roar of pure, unadulterated frustration. His laughter echoes, a bitter sound of defeat. The void fades, replaced by a dusty road and a procession of soldiers, and the cold, hard reality of iron shackles. He's now part of a prisoner transport, under heavy guard. All around him, the other prisoners plead their innocence, but a guard quickly shouts for them to be quiet. His harsh glare is enough to silence the crowd. He mutters under his breath, dismissing them as trash. But another voice pipes up, also claiming to be wronged. The guard turns, impatiently asking what he wants. The man insists he was framed for a serious crime. The soldier listens with a cold, unsympathetic stare, and the prisoner realizes he's trapped in a corrupt system. The guard notes the presence of a young paladin, and knows that one wrong move could be his last. He turns his frustration on the prisoner, questioning his audacity. He offers false hope of a fair trial, ordering the man to be silent. The defeated prisoner shuffles back into the procession, but the guard knows the man was framed and is already doomed. His attention is then drawn to another captive, a man who stands in stark contrast to the meek merchant. He wonders how they even managed to capture a barbarian of this size. As Kadim, now a prisoner, walks silently among the condemned, Kadim struggles to understand what's happening. His body feels familiar, but all his hard-earned power is gone. On the bright side, the Berserker's madness has vanished with it. He realizes this must be the new game plus he was warned about. But none of it makes any sense. After all, what kind of game starts you off as a prisoner? His thoughts are interrupted by the old man beside him, who offers him a root to chew on for the journey. Kadim looks at him, surprised by the sudden kindness. The man explains he's repaying a debt to barbarians from his past. Kadim stares at the small root in his shackled hands. The old man asks how a warrior like him was even captured. Kadim admits he doesn't know, and the old man simply nods. He explains that the Empire is hostile to pagans like barbarians, but Kadim is stuck on the word empire, a name he doesn't recognize. He remembers Lucaonia as a kingdom, not an empire. He realizes this isn't just a new game, it's a whole new timeline. They're being marched to the capital, the holy city of Lucaon, where the other prisoners will face judges, but he will face an inquisition. Kadim just takes it in stride. Hey, at least he's still breathing. The old man is horrified by Kadim's calm acceptance. He warns that the Inquisitors are obsessed with cruelty and will take great pleasure in torturing a pagan, but his frantic warning is silenced by a sudden, brutal strike. The young paladin smashes him to the ground. He then declares that any insult to their god's agent will be paid for with their life. Having made his point, the paladin turns his horse and addresses Kadim directly, blaming him for the disturbance. He demands that Kadim bow and beg for forgiveness. He offers a smug deal, beg, and he might let Kadim live. But Kadim responds with a chilling, almost predatory grin. The paladin explodes in fury at the perceived mockery. He declares it blasphemy and charges forward to strike. But as the blade rushes toward him, Kadim's calm expression doesn't even waver. The paladin's rage is met with pure defiance, and with impossible ease, Kadim stops the sword with his bare hands. The paladin struggles, but his weapon is held fast. His arrogant facade shatters into pure shock. Kadim offers to give the paladin exactly what he's asking for. The knight can only watch, frozen in disbelief. His rage boils over as he screams threats of judgment. But that fury quickly turns to sheer terror, as Kadim leaps into the air with impossible strength and comes crashing down with devastating force. The dust settles to reveal the paladin utterly defeated. His horse lies motionless on the ground, and the arrogant knight is knocked out cold. Kadim stands, still shackled, but now in complete control. The paladin struggles to his feet, seething with rage. He can't believe a pagan dared to harm an agent of God. The guard watches, knowing the rookie paladin isn't down for the count. The paladin summons a spear of light and prepares for a second, more serious attack. Kadim watches, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. The paladin invokes the name of his god, Elga. He begins a prayer for divine power, asking for the strength to pass judgment on the pagan. His face contorts with righteous fury, ready to deliver the final blow. He roars, channeling divine power into his attack. The paladin charges forward with blinding speed, but Kadim simply raises his hands to meet the blow. His expression is one of pure, unbothered confidence. The spear of light hurtles toward him and slams into him with explosive force. The impact carves a trench in the earth, sending Kadim flying. He sits up in the wreckage, a faint light glowing on his chest. The paladin is shocked that the pagan is still alive. He notes that Kadim's durability is as monstrous as his build. Kadim realizes his powers are reset, leaving only his Berserker trait. He knows if there were just one demon, this fight would be over. He desperately searches for a way out of this predicament. But then, he catches a familiar scent from the wreckage. The paladin slowly approaches, confident in his victory. He acknowledges Kadim's strength but declares this is the end. He offers a merciful death in the name of his god, but his righteous speech is cut short by a sudden realization. He recoils, overwhelmed by a foul stench filling the air. He glares at Kadim, demanding to know what the smell is. But Kadim just grins at the paladin's furious outburst. He mocks the knight, suggesting his god has chosen a new champion. With a powerful slam, he punches straight into the earth and unearths the buried head of a demon. The paladin recoils, disgusted by the grotesque trophy. Kadim points out the irony. The holy attack was what dug it up. A dark, predatory smile crosses his face. His eyes gleam as he holds the key to his power. He brings the demon's head closer and begins to absorb its foul essence. He drinks deep from the demonic source. The paladin and his men can only watch in disgust. He declares Kadim too filthy to even approach, so he orders one of his own men to do the dirty work. As Kadim's power begins to surge through him, the terrified guard reluctantly moves forward. He charges toward the now glowing barbarian. But Kadim's hand lashes out with blinding speed. He grabs the soldier's face with crushing force and lifts him off the ground with a single hand. The soldier pleads for mercy, his voice trembling. But Kadim's grip only tightens, merciless and unyielding. The paladin can only watch, his arrogance replaced by sheer terror. And in a single brutal motion, the soldier is silenced forever. Kadim notes the demon was weak, offering only a minor boost. But it's more than enough to break free from this procession. He lets out a roar as the Berserker's power surges through him. The remaining guards tremble, their courage completely shattered. They stare at the barbarian, their faces pale with fear. One of them screams that he's a monster, a demon in human form. The guards drop their spears, their courage failing them. They scramble back in terror from the powered-up barbarian. The paladin screams at his men to form ranks and attack. He threatens them with military law if they dare to run. He tries to convince himself that Kadim is still vulnerable, but his pep talk is cut short by a brutal, lightning-fast strike. The arrogant knight is sent crashing to the ground. He can only lie there, stunned by the sheer force of the blow. His eyes fall upon the source of Kadim's power, the demon's head, and the paladin's righteous fury finally gives way to pure dread. His eyes widen, the terror finally sinking in. As Kadim, now a blur of berserker rage, charges forward, the paladin scrambles back into a defensive stance. He begins a desperate prayer, calling on his god Elga. He asks for the power to strike down this servant of demons, and his eyes blaze with holy, righteous fury. The two warriors rush toward each other in a final, desperate clash. The paladin thrusts his spear forward with all his might, and his divine power explodes on impact. He sneers, declaring this the end for the barbarian. But the smoke clears to reveal Kadim, mocking the paladin's attack. The knight's confidence shatters into pure, unadulterated terror. Kadim effortlessly catches the divine spear with his bare hand. He channels his newfound power into a single glowing fist and delivers a devastating blow to the knight's face. The paladin is brutally beaten into submission. Kadim stands over the broken man, his rage finally subsiding. The once proud paladin can only beg for forgiveness. He pleads for mercy from the man he tried to execute, and Kadim, having proven his point, simply walks away. The paladin seethes, promising to get his revenge. He lies defeated on the ground, utterly broken. He continues to swear vengeance in his god's name until he notices something. A spear suddenly slams into the dirt. As Kadim calmly walks up to him, the paladin's eyes widen in terror as a shadow falls over him. He's met with a cold, unforgiving stare. Kadim grips the spear, noting the knight's unwavering faith. He looms over the fallen man, ready to pass judgment, offering a final, chilling wish for the paladin's afterlife. The paladin's pleas for mercy are brutally silenced. He scoffs at the knight, calling him a mere pet to his god. And with that, the agent of Elga is no more. His face is a mask of cold, bloody resolve. He turns his attention to the fleeing guards. They scramble away, their formation completely broken. But he remembers a lesson from his first playthrough. Never leave any witnesses behind. One of them glances back, his face a mask of terror. He thought he was safe, but his hope is cut short. A thrown spear finds its mark with brutal accuracy, It pierces straight through the fleeing soldier, ending his escape in an instant. Kadim calmly reaches for another makeshift projectile. He's learned his lesson. Never leave loose ends. One last guard hides in the bushes, trembling in fear. He covers his mouth, hoping to remain unseen. But Kadim's cold gaze turns directly toward him. He hurls the final spear with terrifying force. It cuts through the air, a blur of deadly motion, and the final guard is silenced for good. But his work isn't done, as a voice calls out to him. The old man praises him, clearly thinking they're on the same side. He asks for freedom, only to be struck down without a word. The other prisoners stare, their hope turning to pure dread. Kadim smashes his own shackles, recalling a hard-learned lesson. As the terrified prisoners begin to back away, he will leave no loose ends, not even them. One of them pleads for his life, asking what they did wrong. But his pleas are met with cold, unfeeling resolve. The prisoner's final plea is met with a cold, unyielding stare. Kadim turns his back on the carnage, leaving a field of silenced witnesses behind him. He knows that if any of them had survived, they would have talked, and that's a risk he simply cannot afford to take. But it seems he missed one, who can only curse his name in terror. The man scrambles into the bushes, trying to hide from the monster, but there is no escape from the barbarian's cold fury. Kadim stands over the last loose end, his decision already made. He raises his spear, preparing to ensure his secret remains safe. His grip tightens on the spear shaft. The last survivor can only tremble before him. He begs for mercy, swearing he's done nothing wrong. But Kadim coldly asks for a reason to spare him. The man desperately explains he has a family waiting, and that he was captured under false accusations. Kadim acknowledges his innocence but says that's no reason to spare him. The prisoner's face contorts in pure, unadulterated horror. In a last-ditch effort, he offers to be a guide. The offer gives Kadim a moment of pause. He asks the man about Lucaionia, recalling it as a kingdom, not an empire. The terrified guide struggles to understand the question. He wonders if Kadim is from a tribe cut off from civilization for centuries. Kadim's cold stare demands an answer, his patience wearing thin. The man explains that the Lucaionia Empire was founded 248 years ago. Kadim tries to place the date, asking about the old calendar system. The guide stammers that the old calendar is now over 1,100 years old. The horrifying truth sinks in. He's been thrown centuries into the future. He rapidly questions the man about the church and the demon realm. The guide explains that the once unified continent is now fractured into 3 parts. The guide explains the Elga Church used the demon outbreak to seize power, and that the demon realm is now a land of no return. Kadim is shocked that no one has ever come back. He lists the names of his former comrades, hoping for a sign. The guide claims he's never heard of them. Total blank slate, apparently. But he stops, the name Melissa jogging his memory. Kadim's gaze intensifies, waiting for an answer. The guide mutters to himself, trying to recall the details. But Kadim realizes the heroes who saved the world are now just gone. He demands to know why the demons even appeared, but gets no answer. The guide explains the legends of how the demons first appeared, but he claims only the king in the heavens knows the real truth. Kadim listens, the weight of this new timeline settling in. He pulls a spear from the ground. Much to the guide's confusion, he stares out at the vast, empty landscape before him and realizes he's been thrown 300 years into the future. He's an outcast from his old life and now a relic in this one. His friends, the heroes who saved the world, are now just dust and memories. He turns, his resolve hardening in the face of this new, lonely path. He questions the point of repeating the endless slaughter, of drinking demon blood and fighting back the madness. After all, what's to stop this New Game Plus Plus from becoming New Game Plus 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 Plus? With that horrifying thought, a dark decision settles in his mind. He snaps the wooden spear with a sharp crack. The guide can only watch, his confusion turning to alarm. As Kadim raises the sharpened point to his own throat, he's decided to end this twisted game on his own terms. The guide screams, begging him to stop what he's doing. But Kadim believes if he must die, there's no better time than now. He presses the sharpened point against his throat. His only hope is that this isn't another cruel trick from the game. He closes his eyes, ready for the end. But a memory suddenly flashes through his mind. He remembers a conversation from long ago, a vision of Melissa talking about her future plans. She wanted to build a tower to teach magic. His eyes fly open as the pieces click into place. He grabs the guide, demanding to know about Melissa. The man stammers that the first master of the Mage Tower had a similar name. He demands to know the location of the Mage Tower. The guide explains it's a 2-month journey from their current location. Kadim takes in the information, his resolve hardening. A small, almost imperceptible smile forms on his lips. He curses inwardly, knowing what this means for his plans. The memory of Melissa's smile flashes through his mind. He realizes he can't just give up and end it all now. He orders the man to guide him, taking the fastest route possible. The guide protests, saying he can't be away from his family for so long. Kadim offers a payment the man can't refuse, the most precious thing he has. His offer is simple: guide him, and the man gets to keep his life. He plants a spear in the ground, sealing their grim pact. Kadim orders him to find the key and gather whatever they need to survive. While the guide scavenges, Kadim searches for a suitable weapon. He finds a simple sword, confident he can enhance it with his power. The paladin's holy spear would be ideal, but it rejects anyone but its master. He can't help but miss the powerful axe he wielded in his first playthrough. The guide, now free and packed for the road, is just glad to be alive, until he sees Kadim collecting the demon's essence into a water skin, a portable power-up ready for when he needs it most. With his new sword at his side, Kadim declares it's time to depart, and so begins their long, uncertain journey. Days later, the battlefield is a grim, silent monument. Only crows have come to pay their respects, until a new party arrives to find the fallen paladin Linton. A knight reports the total devastation of the transport. He awaits orders from his superior, Lady Helia. She tells her subordinate to search for clues, annoyed by the foolishness that led to this mess. Lady Helia is furious, wondering who dared to kill a paladin, especially one with connections to the archbishop. She vows to hunt down whoever is responsible for this mess. As night falls, our protagonist is far from the scene. Kadim rests by a campfire deep in the wilderness. The fire slowly dies down to embers. He sleeps, exhausted from the journey. Nearby, a small bundle sits on a rock. But in the darkness, someone is making a run for it. It's the guide, trying to sneak away under the cover of night. He thinks he's finally escaped his monstrous captor. His only thought is to run as far and as fast as he can. He'd thought getting a traveling companion was a good idea. But not when that companion devours demon corpses and slaughters dozens. He recalls his observations from the past few days. He'd tried to be a good servant, offering food and supplies. He even tried to make sure Kadim was comfortable by the fire, and he quickly learned to keep his mouth shut. The barbarian was a silent, unreadable force of nature. He felt less like a guide and more like a lion tamer, but even that, he thinks, he could have endured somehow. But the real problem was the barbarian's absurd marching speed. Kadim would simply state that he was too slow. The guide, a merchant proud of his own stamina, was struggling. He could barely give a direction before Kadim was already gone. He'd race ahead, leaving the guide to desperately catch up. And then he would just stand there, waiting with a cold stare. His eyes were a constant, silent pressure, a clear threat of what would happen if he fell behind. The guide wonders if the man's legs are forged from steel. He realizes that at this pace, he might not survive the journey. He knew he had to find a way to escape, so he sprints through the forest, gasping for air. He believes the darkness will cover his tracks, but his escape comes at a heavy price. He was forced to leave behind his bag, his entire fortune. He knew trying to retrieve it would wake the sleeping monster. In the end, he decides his life is more valuable than his belongings. But just as he thinks he's safe, he hears footsteps. He stops, lost, but confident he's put enough distance between them. He lets out a sigh of relief, believing he's finally free. But his relief shatters as he turns around. He can't believe his eyes, his face pale with shock. Kadim stands before him, asking where he's going. He calmly reminds the guide about the payment he was promised. The man trembles, unable to form a coherent sentence. He drops to his knees, begging for forgiveness for his betrayal. He prostrates himself, pleading for just one more chance. But Kadim wants a reason, not an apology. He demands to know why the guide tried to run away. The man finally admits the truth. Kadim's pace is just too much for him. He explains that at Kadim's pace he felt he would collapse, and now he's certain he's about to be silenced for good. Kadim listens, his expression unreadable. He simply tells the man it's time to head back, and promises to walk slower, much to the guide's disbelief. With that, Kadim turns and leads the way back to camp. The guide is left speechless by this unexpected mercy. Soon their campfire is roaring once more. But while the guide sleeps, Kadim keeps a silent, watchful vigil. The poor man is haunted by nightmares, begging for his life in his sleep. Kadim sits in silence, lost in thought. His relentless pace was a habit from his first life, a life spent in the barren, hostile demon realm. He lets out a long, slow breath. But this world is different, and for now, the madness is quiet. As they continue their journey, the guide points the way. He suggests a detour to avoid the heavily guarded border. He looks back, waiting for Kadim's approval. The guide is surprised by the barbarian's easy compliance. But Kadim knows his own map is 300 years out of date, and he needs this man to find his way. The guide explains that paladins are a constant threat in this land. Kadim realizes that's why they haven't seen any demons yet. He worries about his dwindling supply of demon blood. As night falls on their journey, the guide suddenly stops, spotting something in the distance. They've stumbled upon a small, secluded village. The guide suggests they stop there for the night, but Kadim's gaze narrows, sensing something is wrong. The guide agrees, noting the complete lack of lights. And worse, the main gate is wide open and unguarded. The guide wonders if the village is abandoned, but Kadim is determined to find out. He panics, warning that a monster might have driven everyone away. The village itself is eerily silent and still. But the guide's warning is lost on Kadim, who grips his sword at the mere mention of a demon. He draws his weapon, a hunter ready for his prey. To him, the guide's greatest fear is welcome news indeed. He walks into the deserted town without a hint of fear. The guide follows, noting it doesn't look abandoned, just empty. Kadim steps forward, ready to uncover the village's secret. His gaze is fixed on something just ahead. The guide asks why he suddenly stopped moving. He points out that only one door in the village is open. And from the darkness, a monstrous foot steps out. A goblin-like creature lunges from the shadows. Its eyes glow with a familiar demonic malice, but Kadim cuts it down in a single fluid motion. The monster is sent flying back from the impact. The guide stumbles away as the body lands at his feet, but even now its hand still twitches with unholy life. And it seems the first one brought some friends. The guide panics, but Kadim notes their unusual aggression. He realizes this means they've come to the right place. One of the goblins charges forward with a crude club, but Kadim's sword flashes to meet the attack. The other creatures watch, their eyes burning with malice. Kadim grips his sword, ready for the next wave. Another goblin lunges, its blade held high, but Kadim is already in motion, his sword a blur, as he cuts through the monster with ease. He parries the first blow with a flash of steel, but another one is already charging forward. Kadim moves with practiced, deadly grace, and cuts down the next attacker without hesitation. His blade finds its mark with brutal efficiency. The creature is dispatched in an instant. He stands over the fallen monster, his work not yet done. The guide can only watch as the bodies pile up around him. He asks if the danger has passed, but Kadim isn't so sure. He suddenly points his sword, not at the guide, but past him. A monstrous hand grips the doorframe from the shadows. A hulking goblin steps out, carrying an unconscious person. It's a young girl slung over the creature's shoulder. The monster lets out a furious roar, ready to attack, but a blade cuts through the air with deadly speed. Kadim's sword finds its mark with perfect accuracy. The goblin can only stare in disbelief as its life fades. It collapses to the ground, dropping its captive. The guide worries that the person might be a child, but Kadim simply grips his sword, promising that won't be an issue. He gently lifts the small, unconscious figure from the ground. With surprising care, he pulls back her hood, his expression grim and unreadable. He tells the terrified girl he just needs to ask her a few questions, but the guide steps in, trying a much gentler approach. He offers her a piece of dried licorice, explaining that it's sweet. The girl watches him, her fear slowly giving way to curiosity. She gives the treat a tentative lick, her tears finally stopping. Kadim watches on, noting that the guide is surprisingly good with kids. The man admits wistfully that he has a son around her age. Kadim watches the scene unfold, his expression unreadable. The girl nibbles on the treat, her fear slowly subsiding. The guide promises they'll find her mother, trying to lift her spirits. But her hope is gone as she explains her parents abandoned her. Kadim's gaze sharpens, taking in this new, grim detail. The guide is horrified, wondering who could have left her like this. Kadim looks down at a strange mark on his chest, a sudden realization dawning on him. He turns back to the girl, a silent question in his eyes. Just then, a crowd of villagers appears, led by a frantic woman. She rushes forward and embraces the child, revealing herself to be her mother. The mother weeps, overcome with gratitude for her daughter's return. The other villagers arrive, stunned by the carnage. One of them turns to Kadim, asking if he did this. Kadim pulls his sword from a fallen goblin, and coldly states that his blade did the work. He demands to know why they would sacrifice a child, especially to a demon. The villagers can only look down in shame. The elder begins to tell their story, explaining that the goblins recently became aggressive. He explains they gathered their men to fight the goblins, and came face to face with a powerful demon lord. The villagers were no match for the demonic horde, but instead of killing them, the demon gave an ultimatum. It demanded a sacrifice from each family, their youngest child. The guide is horrified, realizing what this implies, but the villagers defend their choice, claiming they had no other way to survive. But their excuses fall on deaf ears. as Kadim cuts the argument short with a single, brutal blow. He then asks a very specific question about the demon's appearance. The elder stammers that the demon didn't have any horns. Kadim listens, his expression cold and analytical. He concludes that a hornless demon is a low-rank creature, and therefore not much of a threat. He grips his sword and tells the man to lead the way. The elder is horrified, asking where he could possibly want to go. Kadim looks down at the cowardly villagers. He's going straight to the demon's den, obviously. The elder repeats that the creature had no horns, and Kadim confirms that's exactly why this will be easy. He's going straight to the source of the problem. And so, with torches lit against the darkness, the villagers follow the one man brave enough to lead them. The elder admits they have nothing to offer as payment, but Kadim isn't doing this for them or for money. The elder is just grateful for the help, whatever the reason. Instead of coin, they offer him the only real weapon they have. Soon, they arrive at the entrance to a dark cave. The elder confirms this is the demon's lair, and with a familiar weight in his hands, Kadim is ready. The elder quickly makes an excuse to leave, much to the guide's absolute fury, but Kadim dismisses them, telling the guide he's been promoted to torchbearer. The guide watches them go, realizing this was not in the job description, and so, the two of them stand alone at the mouth of the cave. The guide asks why he let the villagers off so easily for their cowardice. Kadim simply asks if he's ever faced a living demon. The guide admits he's only ever seen their remains. Kadim explains that facing a demon changes a person fundamentally. It strips away everything but fear, and only a rare few can ever stand against it. The guide still can't accept their actions, arguing even beasts protect their young. But Kadim explains that survival sometimes requires unthinkable choices. The guide counters that from the children's view it was total abandonment. He questions what kind of life is worth living if you sacrifice your humanity for it. As they venture deeper into the cave, the guide's words hang heavy in the air. Kadim reflects that this merchant, a mere game character, has a stronger moral compass than he does. He wonders if he can ever return to a normal life after everything he's done. The guide, sensing the shift in mood, asks if the other children are still alive. Kadim's expression hardens, his focus returning to the mission. He explains that a truly evil demon would have kept the children alive. The guide is confused by this grim logic, still holding the axe. But Kadim suddenly snatches the weapon from his hands. With a flash of movement, he hurls it into the darkness. The guide flinches, not knowing what just happened. The axe flies through the air with deadly precision, and finds its mark in the shadows ahead. Kadim holds out his hand for the torch as a figure emerges. A hulking goblin stumbles out of the darkness, with the axe buried deep in its head. The goblin collapses, but more of its kind emerge from the shadows. A whole horde of them now charges forward with a furious roar. The guide panics, but Kadim simply tells him to keep the light steady. He takes a single powerful step forward to meet the wave. The first goblin lunges, its crude sword aimed to kill, but Kadim parries the blow with practiced ease. He grabs the creature's arm, stopping it in its tracks, as another one swings a heavy club from behind. He uses the first goblin's own sword to block the second attack. His expression remains cold and focused, completely unbothered. He notes the cramped cave will limit his sword's range, but the goblins don't seem to care about the terrain. He tightens his grip, ready for a close-quarters fight, and charges headfirst into the waiting horde. His sword becomes a blur of deadly motion, as the blade finds its mark with brutal precision. He moves through them with practiced lethal efficiency. His expression is cold, a man simply doing a job. He realizes his sword alone won't be enough for this crowd, and reaches for the axe he'd thrown just moments before. He brings the axe down with brutal finality. Now armed with two weapons, he becomes a whirlwind of death. He cuts down two more with a single fluid motion. His blade slices clean through another attacker, leaving a trail of defeated monsters in his wake. The guide can only stare, stunned by the one-man army before him. He stands amidst the carnage, the sole witness to the slaughter. He shouts that the remaining goblins are finally turning tail and running, but Kadim knows this is just part of the plan. They'll lead him right to their boss. And with his axe still dripping, he's more than ready to meet them. The guide points out that the narrow path is opening up again. They continue deeper into the darkness, the torch their only light. The tunnel leads them into a massive, open cavern. The guide wonders if they've found the goblin's main base, but Kadim's senses are tingling, picking up a familiar presence. He warns the guide that a demon is close by. He gives some less than reassuring survival tips for the coming fight. His eyes narrow, locking onto his unseen target. And with a blur of motion, he springs into action. He launches himself forward, ready for the main event. His axe swings down a blur of bloody motion, and he comes face to face with the demon lord of the cave. The creature notes that he's not one of the usual villagers. Its eyes gleam with a cruel, predatory intelligence. Kadim's gaze narrows, taking in every detail. He notices something the villagers conveniently forgot to mention: horns. They may be small, but they're definitely growing. The two warriors stand in a tense, silent face-off. Kadim realizes this is a low-rank demon evolving into something far more dangerous. And the demon seems to enjoy the look on his face. The demon lunges forward with a furious roar, but Kadim's eyes are sharp, tracking the movement. He brings his weapons up just in time to block the blow. The demon sneers, mocking the weakness of humans, but Kadim realizes he barely saw the attack coming, and that this creature is far beyond a simple low-rank demon. It's angry he killed its goblins and demands he beg for forgiveness. Kadim knows a mid-rank demon is a threat even to elite soldiers. The creature offers him a single, twisted chance to survive. It points a clawed finger, telling him not to use one of his arms. It demands he sever his own arm and consume it completely. Kadim knows he's outmatched, but sees a glimmer of hope the horns aren't fully grown. The demon grows impatient, mocking his hesitation. But Kadim just plants his sword, telling the creature it's been noisy. He pulls out his water skin, saying he doesn't listen to mere blood bags, and begins to drink the foul, demonic essence. The demon's eyes widen as it recognizes the familiar putrid scent. It can't understand why a human would possess such a thing. Kadim drains the last drop, tossing the empty skin aside. And as a dark aura surrounds him, the real fight is about to begin. The Berserker's power surges through him in a wave of agony. The demon can only stare, its arrogance faltering for a moment. His eyes burn with a familiar crimson light. He knows this old blood won't last long, so he has to end this fast. For the first time, the creature feels a flicker of fear, but its rage quickly overpowers its doubt. It lunges forward, claws extended for the kill, but Kadim wonders if its newfound power has made it reckless. The demon unleashes a flurry of razor-sharp strikes, but to the powered-up Kadim, its movements are now crystal clear. He brings his axe down with devastating force. The demon can only stare, shocked by this sudden power. But Kadim's expression is cold, his focus absolute. He knows his borrowed weapons are already starting to fail, but he's ready to fight with his fists if he has to. The demon's shock quickly turns back to pure rage. It screams, furious at this human's defiance. Kadim charges forward in a blur of motion, his eyes burning with the Berserker's crimson light. The two warriors face off for the final clash. Kadim brings both weapons down in a brutal crossing strike, but the demon meets the blow with its own razor-sharp claws. The sheer force of the impact drives the creature back. It can only stare, stunned by the human's impossible strength. But Kadim presses forward, his power still surging, and with a final explosive push, he shatters the demon's defenses completely. The creature is in disbelief, wondering how a mere human could be so strong. Its shock quickly turns to a final, desperate rage. It lunges forward, its claws aimed straight for Kadim's face. But the claws find their mark, sinking deep into his chest. The demon is the one sent staggering back from the impact. Kadim simply glances down at the wound, completely unfazed. The creature can't believe the human is still standing. He winds up for a devastating counterattack, his eyes burning with cold, calculated rage. And for the first time, the demon knows true fear. It tries to retreat, but there's nowhere left to run. Kadim's blade comes down with earth-shattering force. He stands over his fallen foe, the battle finally won. The demon stares in disbelief, asking what he's even looking at. It questions if Kadim is even human anymore, but Kadim's burning eyes give no answer. The demon concludes he's facing a monster in human skin. It lunges again, but Kadim easily deflects the blow. The creature is sent staggering back from the sheer force. It realizes a head-on fight is now completely useless, but its attention is suddenly pulled away in a panic. It screams at its own goblins to stay back from the guide, who is currently trying his best to fend them off with a torch. The demon's attention shifts to the flickering torchlight. It realizes that if it can just extinguish that flame, Kadim's sword is still planted in the ground. As he sees a goblin rushing toward the guide, he reaches down, his hand closing around a familiar weapon. With a firm grip, he retrieves the axe from the cavern floor. He knows exactly what the demon is trying to accomplish, but he promises that things will not go according to its plan. The demon glares down at the powered-up human. Kadim notes the goblin's speed, realizing a simple throw will be dodged, so he decides to try a different approach. He grips his axe with renewed purpose, and declares he'll just destroy the demon's foothold instead. He hurls the axe with all his might, catching the demon completely off guard. The weapon spins through the air, aimed not at the creature, but at the rock formation it's standing on. Meanwhile, the guide is still trying to fend off the remaining goblins. The demon lord loses its balance as its perch shatters, and the entire stalactite comes crashing down in a cloud of dust. Kadim retrieves his sword from the cavern floor. The demon lord is temporarily blinded by the dust, and Kadim takes the opportunity to press his attack. He lunges forward, his berserker aura flaring around him. His blade finds its mark, piercing straight through the demon's head. The creature screams in agony, trying to dislodge the weapon. Kadim just smirks, complimenting its new facial accessory. But even with a sword in its skull, the demon roars with defiance. Kadim is surprised by its sheer tenacity. He tightens his grip, ready to finish this for good. Kadim calls the creature a nuisance, his patience clearly worn thin. The demon can only scream as the blade grinds deeper. With a powerful twist, Kadim uses the sword as a lever and rips the creature's head clean in two. The demon's skull shatters under the immense pressure, and its entire body is torn apart in a final, brutal display. As the berserker's aura fades, Kadim notes his power is already waning. He lets out a breath, relieved he got that power up just in time. But his attention is suddenly drawn to the side, where the remaining goblins are frozen in absolute terror. He knows that with the demon gone, the goblins are no longer under its influence, but his grip on his sword only tightens. He cuts down another one without a second thought, because these creatures are already tainted, and he's leaving no loose ends. The remaining goblins can only stare in terror, but Kadim moves in, a blur of deadly intent. His strike is swift, merciless, and final. He notices one of them trying to make a run for it, but his cold gaze promises there will be no escape. He turns to face the last of the goblin horde. He turns his attention to the last remaining goblin. The guide screams his name, sensing what's about to happen. He watches in horror as Kadim makes his move, but Kadim's cold gaze never wavers from his target. He forces his own sword into the guide's trembling hands. The man can only stare, paralyzed by sheer terror. Kadim forces him to deliver the final blow himself, a harsh lesson in this new, unforgiving world. The guide asks if he's all right, noticing his pale complexion. But Kadim brushes it off, saying their work here isn't finished. The guide can only stammer his agreement, still terrified. And so they leave the cave, Kadim dragging his prize behind him. Back in the village, word spreads that the children have returned. The villagers are overcome with joy, thanking the mercenary for his help. They offer him food and rest, but Kadim is already focused on his next task. A mother weeps with relief, finally reunited with her child. The villagers are in awe, but also wary of the demon on his shoulder. But Kadim tells them to feed the children first, a rare moment of compassion. He turns to leave, his grim work in this village now complete, but the rescued children are left with scars that will never truly fade. The guide asks what will happen to the children now, but his question is answered by a horrifying sight. The children are huddled together, chanting strange, terrifying phrases. Kadim explains that they've been brainwashed since their capture. They repeat the same twisted mantra over and over again. Their minds have been filled with words of worthlessness and despair. The psychological torment is so powerful, it could break even a priest. But Kadim clarifies that it's not brainwashing, just the truth of their abandonment, burned into their minds forever. The guide is horrified, unable to comprehend such cruelty. Because for a demon, human despair is the finest meal. The guide stares, the full weight of the situation crashing down on him. He finally understands the demon's truly twisted cruelty. He asks if the children can ever recover if their parents truly repent. Kadim admits that it's not entirely impossible, but he doubts that parents who abandoned their children once could ever truly change. The guide is left speechless by the cold, hard truth. He turns away, the grim reality of their world settling in. As Kadim walks away, the guide calls out to him. He asks why they're leaving so soon, without even resting. But Kadim knows that by now, witnesses to his escape have likely reported him. He explains that killing a paladin is a crime the Empire won't just overlook. The guide suddenly remembers that tiny detail about the barbarian killing an agent of God, and Kadim knows that if they're unlucky, pursuers are already on their trail. He's not wrong, as Lady Helia and her knights have already found the scene. Her expression makes it clear she's not happy about this little mess. Back in the village, Kadim begins to extract the demon's essence, squeezing every last drop of power from its remains. He carefully collects the foul liquid into his water skin. With his emergency power-up secured, his work here is officially done. He tosses the now useless demon carcass aside like trash. The village elder asks what Kadim plans to do with the demon's corpse. Kadim simply tells them to burn it, as he has no use for it. The elder is confused, wondering why he'd throw away such a valuable prize. Another villager sees an opportunity for a quick profit. But Kadim warns that the scent will attract more monsters, and asks if they want to repeat this whole ordeal. The villagers quickly change their tune, terrified by his cold logic. They immediately begin dragging the corpse away to be burned. But before he can leave, one of the women calls out to him. She offers him a few supplies as a token of their gratitude. Kadim accepts their offering, promising to put it to good use. He quickly dons the new clothes they've provided, securing a new belt around his waist. Now properly equipped, he's ready to leave immediately. But as he prepares to move, he feels a strange sensation, a faint glow from the scar left by the paladin. He notes that while his body heals quickly from normal wounds, the damage from a blessed weapon is a different story entirely. He now understands that wasn't just an ordinary spear, a weapon that still stands over its fallen master, a silent testament to its power. Lady Helia, the commander of this investigation, her subordinate reports a complete lack of clues and gets called pathetic for his efforts. She tells him to analyze the scene, not just stare at the carnage. He eagerly asks if she already has a suspect in mind. She explodes, telling him to find evidence instead of just guessing. She scolds him, saying this is why he's still stuck at his rank. He thinks she's just as clueless, but knows he can't argue. Not with Helia Monel, the Archpaladin, a warrior who earned her title by slaying 20 demons single-handedly. She is the youngest Archpaladin in the entire empire. He knows better than to argue with his superior. Helia sighs, realizing there's no other choice. She orders him to bring out a holy relic from the Archbishop. Her subordinate is shocked, recognizing it as Damien's twin mirrors, a relic that once showed the past and future until the future seeing half shattered. Helia snaps, reminding him this is exactly what it's for and that the victim was the Archbishop's nephew. She reassures him it will only break if it reflects a great demon. With a heavy heart, he presents the ancient artifact. Helia kneels, preparing to activate the mirror's power, and a brilliant light begins to emanate from its surface. The mirror projects a beam of purple light, replaying the entire brutal confrontation for them. They see the barbarian's eyes glowing with demonic power, and the holy relic suddenly shatters into 1,000 pieces. Her subordinate is stunned, exclaiming that the mirror broke. Helia knows it was only meant to break for a great demon. The knight urges her to return and report this immediately. But Helia has no intention of retreating now that she has a lead. She declares that they will continue the search as planned. Her hand tightens on her sword, her resolve unwavering. She draws her sword, her resolve absolute, and vows to personally cut down the fiend in human skin. Meanwhile, the guide sits alone by the river. He can't stop thinking about the village children and his own son back home. He shakes his head, trying to push the grim thoughts away. He knows he has to stay strong if he ever wants to see his family again. He returns to camp to find Kadim already asleep. He offers to make dinner, only to realize his companion is out cold. The guide watches him, a little surprised. But his surprise turns to concern as Kadim trembles in his sleep. The guide panics as Kadim suddenly collapses into his arms. He sees the wound on Kadim's chest has reopened, raw and angry. Kadim realizes the paladin's blessed spear is the cause of this. Its holy power was designed to be fatal to demons, and since he drinks demon blood, it's now affecting him. He tells the guide that simple rest won't heal this kind of injury. He asks about the moon, and the guide confirms it was a crescent. Kadim seems relieved, saying their timing is perfect for something. But their conversation is cut short by a strange sound in the distance. The guide recognizes it with dawning horror as Kadim prepares for what's coming. It's the sound of barking as dozens of glowing eyes appear in the woods. A massive paw steps forward from the darkness, revealing a monstrous wolf, its fangs bared. Kadim grits his teeth, pushing through the pain. He reaches for his axe, and then his sword, preparing for another fight. He tells the guide to stay back, ignoring his own injuries. He sighs, realizing this world has no intention of letting him rest, as the entire pack of dire wolves surrounds their camp. He mutters that they could have at least waited until he was healed. The alpha of the pack snarls, its eyes fixed on its prey. But Kadim is already exhausted, the holy wound taking its toll. He stands his ground, a lone bastion against the encroaching pack. One of the beasts lunges forward, a blur of fur and fangs. But even injured, Kadim's axe swings in a deadly arc and finds its mark with a sickening thud. The creature is sent flying, but the rest of the pack holds its ground. He realizes his vision is blurred, the injury affecting his aim, and the wolves, sensing his weakness, press their attack. He readies his sword, his expression grim and determined. He parries another attack, the strain showing on his face. His sword cuts through the air, trying to keep the pack at bay. He lands a solid punch, sending one of the beasts reeling. But another one lunges, and he catches it by the jaw. He slams it into the ground with a powerful strike, but his eyes betray the toll this fight is taking on him. And in a moment of weakness, a wolf finds an opening, sinking its teeth deep into his arm. He glares back, his expression turning from pain to fury, and decides if it won't let go, it can be a new weapon. He stands over the fallen wolves, exhausted but not broken. But the rest of the pack is already closing in. He knows they're adapting, tightening their formation. and in his current state, he knows he can't win. The guide tries to help, waving flaming branches at the beasts. Kadim knows that in his weakened state, drinking the demon blood is like poison. But with the pack closing in, he has no other choice. So he drinks deep from the foul, demonic essence, tossing the empty container aside as the power surges. The Berserker's rage returns, and the wolves finally hesitate. The wolves suddenly flinch, sensing the shift in power. Kadim's eyes burn with the Berserker's crimson light, and he moves in, a blur of deadly, focused rage. Meanwhile, the guide is having a much worse time. The wolves lunge, no longer deterred by the flames. His face is a mask of pure, unadulterated terror, but a blade flashes through the darkness to intercept. As Kadim carves a path through the snarling pack, he realizes the buff is different this time, and he's about to find out exactly what it does. His eyes burn with a new, terrifying intensity. He becomes a whirlwind of pure, unadulterated destruction. He realizes the demon's essence has granted him its speed, and the wolves, once so aggressive, now hesitate. The guide shouts in disbelief as the pack begins to retreat, but Kadim knows this fight isn't over yet. As a much larger beast makes its presence known, he stands ready, a bulwark against the coming threat. The alpha of the pack, scarred and furious, steps forward. The guide notes it's twice the size of the others. Great. Kadim realizes he's facing the pack leader. He moves in a blur to meet the charge, and clashes head-on with the massive beast. He's shocked by its raw strength, trying to crush him with its weight. He grits his teeth, his muscles straining against the alpha's power. But the Berserker's rage is beginning to cloud his judgment. He's slowly being pushed back, the pain from his wound flaring. The guide screams out, seeing his protector start to falter. He begs Kadim to snap out of it, to focus on the fight. But the holy wound on his chest burns, reacting to the demonic power. The guide can only watch as his protector is overwhelmed. But instead of fighting, Kadim looks to the sky, waiting. His expression is one of intense concentration. As a realization dawns in his eyes, the condition is finally met. A night with no moon. He slams his sword into the earth, beginning a ritual. He calls upon a legendary warrior, the Lord of Blades, asking for the strength to sate his thirst for battle. He forges the warrior's name into his own blood-soaked sword, and a wave of power erupts, forcing the alpha wolf back. The alpha wolf recoils, stunned by this sudden surge of energy. The guide can only watch, his jaw practically on the floor. Kadim kneels, his body enveloped in a powerful, fiery aura. A familiar game prompt appears, asking him to name his weapon. He recognizes this feeling, a resonance he hasn't felt since his first life, and he gives his mighty blade a truly fearsome name: Mosquito. Seriously, the sword accepts its new, slightly underwhelming title. A crimson symbol burns itself onto the steel, a mark of its newfound power. Unlocking a new trait, the one who forges names. Kadim grips his newly empowered sword, Mosquito. The alpha wolf roars, unimpressed by the light show. The guide can only watch, hoping he's not on the menu. Kadim's blade bites into the earth, drawing on its new power. He charges forward, a blur of focused intent. The alpha wolf meets him head-on in a clash of titans. But as his blade connects, a dark energy begins to flow. The sword seems to drink the life force from its target. A portion of his health is restored, much to his satisfaction. The alpha wolf, now wounded, only grows more furious. He smirks, asking the beast if it's ready for round 2. The alpha wolf roars, its fury only matched by its wounds. As a crimson energy is pulled from the creature's head and flows directly into Kadim's newly empowered blade, a system prompt confirms that all of his wounds are now healed. He's stunned to find even the paladin's holy curse is gone. He stands over the fallen pack, realizing they were a blessing in disguise. He explains the sword's new name, Mosquito, and its lifesteal ability. But he notes its low grade means he'll need to kill dozens to fully heal. He lets out a sigh, knowing that for now this is more than enough. He reflects on this new power, a huge advantage in this world. But he remembers a lesson from his first life. Don't get greedy. The guide peeks out, timidly asking if the coast is clear. He's stunned that Kadim, who was on the verge of collapse, is now standing completely healed, without a single scratch. Kadim turns, asking the merchant why he didn't take the chance to escape. The guide is taken aback by the sudden question. Kadim points out that he was too weak to have given chase. The merchant seems to consider this for a moment. Realizing the barbarian might have a point, the guide can only stammer, caught completely off guard. He tries to play it off, saying he knew he'd just be wolf food, but Kadim isn't buying it. The man realizes he was too busy worrying about the injured barbarian to even consider running. Kadim puts him on night watch, saying he's exhausted and needs to rest. He then offers a very vivid warning about what will happen if he's caught trying to escape. The guide is left terrified, pretty sure that wasn't a joke, and so he keeps a very diligent watch by the fire, not daring to move a muscle. Days later, their journey continues across the vast landscape. The guide explains they have another 10 days of travel to reach the border, and Kadim can only hope they don't run into any more paladins along the way. The guide explains their route is safer from paladins, but not necessarily from bandits. But he quickly adds that bandits are no match for Kadim, who seems a little confused by the sudden praise. He points out a fortress where they can resupply, far from the church's influence. He shows Kadim a map, explaining a shortcut to the Golden Highway. Kadim reflects that this journey, while long, is nothing compared to his first life. He remembers a time when the continent was a war zone, hostile to all outsiders, especially giant barbarians. He recalls that even Melissa treated him with suspicion at first. He muses that her reaction was understandable for a bookish mage accosted by a strange man from the wilds. Her journal entries were less than flattering, to say the least. He smiles at the memory, as the guide reassures him that times have changed. The guide insists he's telling the truth, but Kadim isn't buying it. But their conversation is cut short by a group of men up ahead. Kadim asks the merchant for his take on the situation. The guide identifies them as bandits arguing with another party. Kadim decides it's best to avoid them and find another path. But it's too late, as one of the bandits has already spotted them. The men shout for them to stop, their previous argument forgotten. Kadim can only sigh, clearly annoyed by this new development. The bandits begin to approach, their intentions obvious. And one of them draws his sword, ready for a confrontation. Kadim tightens his grip on his sword. He walks forward, ready to deal with this new problem. His expression is one of pure, unadulterated annoyance. The bandit leader's eye glows as he shouts a challenge. The guide tries to de-escalate, holding up his hands. But the bandits surround Kadim, mistakenly thinking he's an ally. They jeer as the other party flees in terror. They laugh, praising Kadim for showing up to back them. Looks like our boy accidentally joined a gang. Kadim asks them one last time what they think they're doing. The leader thanks him, asking if he's part of Aegon's Furious Horns. Kadim lets out a sigh, clarifying he's not part of their little club. The bandit leader is taken aback by this sudden revelation. His men can only stare, their confidence quickly faltering. The leader's confusion turns to anger as he draws his blade. He accuses Kadim of being a nobody who just showed up to cause trouble. But Kadim's cold, unimpressed stare says it all.